If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on?
You haven't seen the world, so you don't know. Keep going for family.
I'm not family.
No. You're cargo. I'm taking you with me. Do what I say when I say it.
You got any advice on the best way west?
Yeah, go east.
You have a greater purpose than any of us could have ever imagined.
Be careful who you put your faith in.
It might not be her father, but you were someone's.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where we love talking about movies and more. I'm your host, Mason Phillips, and today I have a TV review for you for The Last of Us Season 1. Season 2 just premiered its first episode this past Sunday, so I thought it was the perfect time to go back through this season. Before we get any further in this video, I want to ask you guys to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live on this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. Now let's talk about the plot. Joel and Ellie must survive ruthless killers and monsters on a trek across America after an outbreak. All right, so The Last of Us Season 1. I really dug this whole season. I was a huge fan of the original video game, so I already knew the basic plot, the basic story. One of my favorite games of all time. I'm not as much of an avid gamer now as I used to be, just time reasons. I don't have a lot of time to play video games all the time now. But back in my high school and college days, I was a very avid gamer, and The Last of Us was one of those games that I never hit up when it first released. But a few years after it came out, I got the remastered version for the PlayStation 4, put that game on, and I just had a blast from start to finish. It was one of the most gripping experiences, one of the most cinematic experiences I ever had with a video game. And I heard that they were trying to get an adaptation of this made for so long. The Last of Us was going to be a movie at one point. Neil Druckmann was always going to be part of the creative process in turning the video game into an adaptation for film or TV. And of course, he's the creative vision behind the Last of Us video game series. And he's come on with Craig Mazin to do the TV show. The creative team behind this whole thing, getting it made, it's so incredible watching this whole process because this is one of the most faithful adaptations of anything I think I've ever seen. It adds some stuff, it does change a few things, but the core base of what this show is so true to what the game is. And that's what I love, is it honors where it came from. That's the problem with a lot of adaptations now, and a lot of like legacy sequels, like Star Wars, for example, and other legacy franchises. They don't really honor the source material they're based off of, the core principles of the source material. And The Last of Us is completely different. It honors where it came from, and then it elevates the source material. It adds to it, it enhances it. It's a completely different experience outside of playing a video game, but it's still a worthy experience as well. It's so enriching. You get involved with these characters in a deeper way, in a different way. It's TV versus video game, so you're not controlling the characters, but you still feel as much on this journey with these characters. You still feel as invested with these characters as you did, or maybe even more so than you did when you were playing the game. It's so cool to see the parallels here. There are things that are kept, there are things that are exactly the same, there are things that are changed, some locations are changed. Episodes like episode 3 with Bill and Frank, that wasn't even really in the game at all. That's pretty much completely new for the show. So they make additions like that, but it doesn't detract from what the game was. It actually enhances the story. You don't want it to be like a cookie cutter copy of the original, but you do want it to still be faithful to the original. And that's what this is. That's what this adaptation was to The Last of Us Part 1 video game, originally called The Last of Us, now The Last of Us Part 1 with the PlayStation 5 version of the game. I think that this was, again, one of the best adaptations I've seen, and great casting as well. Pedro Pascal, I know he's in a lot of stuff. That's the big complaint is, oh, you cast Pedro Pascal in this. Of course, he's like in everything, right? No, that's not the case. He just happens to be in a lot of stuff you like to watch, but he's not in everything. It just feels like that. But he's great as Joel. I would have been okay if they even brought Troy Baker back on to play Joel. They didn't. Troy Baker is featured, and that was a cool element of this show is they honored who was involved with that first game. Troy Baker has a role in the second to last episode of this show. Ashley Johnson plays Ellie's mom in this, and she has a role in the final episode of season 1 of The Last of Us. And of course, Ashley Johnson played Ellie. Troy Baker played Joel in the video games. And so, to give you context, if you haven't played the games, that's who they were in the games, and then versus who they are in the show. There's other players. The original actor who played Tommy in the games, he's the head guy of the Kansas City military. So that's cool how they incorporated him into this. And now one interesting aspect is the Marlene actress. She played Marlene in the games, and she plays her again in the show. So there's a little bit of carryover there. So that's really cool. One of the most faithful adaptations I've seen. I love that they carried over a lot of the same creative team. The same composer from the video games is the composer for the show. So you still have that same musical theme from the games that you love so much. It's in the theme song, it's in the show. So it still feels like it has the same essence that the game did. The show carries over that essence, and the skeleton of what the game is the full foundation for what the show is. And I love that they carry that over. Again, they honor the source material. It's so good. It elevates everything. It changes it. It's different. It's a different avenue. It's still the same story, and it's still just as engaging, if not more so at times. And I just love it that they were able to do this. They were able to honor it. They love what they were working with. They weren't trying to change it, make it their own. They were just trying to bring this story into a new medium, but still honor where it came from. I love that aspect of it. That was awesome. Again, I talked about the cast. Pedro Pascal, he was great as Joel. You know, he brings this beaten, world-weary man, a man with a lot of layers. You would think that Joel's so quiet, you know, he doesn't have much to him. He's a pretty quiet, reserved guy. But then you start to unravel who this guy was after the outbreak, after what happened in the first episode. I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything for you from the game or the show, because what happens in that first episode is so groundbreaking and it matters so much to what the rest of the story does. It informs so much on how the rest of the story goes. So where Joel starts before the apocalypse versus after the apocalypse, it adds so much to his character, and you unpack that as you go on further on into the show. And when you think you've kind of gotten to the bottom of this character, you think you've unraveled everything, there's more to him. And there's even more to him in season 2. We're unpacking even more from what happened in season 1 with this character. It's so cool that there's more to this than just what's on the surface. Same with Ellie. There's more to her as well. And I think Bella Ramsey, I've heard some people say it was a bad choice to be cast as this character. I don't see that at all. I think she really captures who Ellie was from the games, and it's a perfect casting for who you would envision, who you saw in the game, and brought that to life in the show. Pedro Pascal was perfectly cast as Joel. I think that Bella Ramsey was perfectly cast as Ellie. They were able to do something that elevated the character, brought something new to the character, and helped us to dive deeper into this character. And so, again, the honoring of the source material and then elevating it here for the show. Additional cast, you know, we get guest appearances from Nick Offerman, who plays Bill in this, and perfectly cast as that character from the game. We only get a little bit of time with him in the game. We get a lot of time with him. He gets his whole own episode in this, and he was fantastic. He won an Emmy for his performance as his character, deservedly so, I think. And then we go to the creative team, specifically Craig Mazin, who I thought has done an amazing job in adapting this, bringing this to the screen, and translating it well for TV. He was able to elevate it and enhance it, and he's one of those people in Hollywood that he's worked on projects before for so long, nothing really took off in a big and grand way except for the HBO show he did called Chernobyl. It's that show that got him the job for The Last of Us Season 1. Chernobyl is one of those shows I still haven't seen. It's a limited series, so I'm going to try to check it out pretty soon while the run of Last of Us Season 2 is going on. I'm going to try to check that out, maybe do a review for that show on the channel as well. But it's that show, what he did on that show, that got him the job for The Last of Us Season 1. And when you really think about it, you know, everything that went down in the real world Chernobyl incident and versus what goes down in The Last of Us Season 1, Last of Us World, I think he was a perfect candidate to adapt this material to television. And so I'm so happy they brought him on, because he truly loves this material. If you've seen him talk about this in behind the scenes interviews, he really loves The Last of Us. And so it's so fun to see him talk about this show, to see his passion for this project, to want to bring it to life. It's a crew that's passionate about working on this project. That is what I love about stuff like this. They're not doing corporate speak. They're not doing, you know, the basic paint by numbers that I have to say this for marketing purposes. I have to say this because it's what the studio wants me to say. Everybody's passionate about working on the show, wants to make the best thing they can, and it's clear they just want to make good television. And I love that. Again, honoring where the show came from and then just making great television. One of the best shows that I have ever seen. And yes, it's adapted from something I've played before, something I've experienced before, something I have a strong connection with. I think they did an amazing job at elevating what I already loved, showing it to me in a different way, not changing anything egregiously. It honors what I already loved. And that's what I appreciated so much about The Last of Us Season 1. All right, so what was mixed about The Last of Us Season 1? The only thing I've got in the mixed category is it does feel a little choppy where the timeline is concerned. And what I mean by that is when we jump from episode to episode, you really feel, and maybe this is probably the case of where I played the video game, I felt the original flow of where the game went. And then when I watched the show adapt that, that's where I think the adaptation may have messed with things a little bit. And not for ill or not for the worst case, but it was a little jarring watching it from the adaptation sense and then watching them, change a little bit of the narrative as we go through the story. And more so, it feels like we jump from event to event to event. It's not that it rushes through these events, but it does feel like, okay, this is part 1 of the game. Now we're jumping to part 2. Now we're jumping to part 3. And I was feeling the jumps versus watching the narrative unravel naturally. I was focused so much on where we were in the game versus where we were in the show. And that's probably a problem with me specifically, or maybe just anybody that played the games. If you never played the game and you just watched the show, you probably don't feel that. So there's probably not a mixed issue if you never played the game. If you did play the game, I'm not saying it's a big issue, but you do feel that, okay, we're jumping from this event to this event to this event. Oh, we skipped over this event, and we're jumping from this thing to this thing to this thing. Again, that's probably just an issue I have as somebody who played the game and then watched the show versus somebody else who watched the show and then maybe played the game or never played the game and just watched the show. Probably not an issue for somebody who wasn't invested in the game, but for me, somebody who was invested in the game, I feel that predictable pattern that the show fell into a little bit. I don't know if that's so much the issue that the show has, because as an adaptation, I don't think you can get out of that issue. It's not a big problem I have, just something that kind of falls here in the mixed category for me specifically, and maybe for anybody that has had a similar experience that I had with this show. All right, what was bad about The Last of Us Season 1? As we get further on into the show, I think you lose the threat of the clickers, is where the clickers were always a constant threat that you had in the game. And, you have your limited ammo. You have certain things about the survival aspect of the game that I feel is lost in the show. The show doesn't feel so much about surviving. It's much more character driven. It's much more character focused. And where the game is very character focused, the game is also all about survival, all about making it through this world, and all about feeling that you might die at any second. I don't feel like the show truly captured that. I think it did about the first half of the show, especially as we get through Kansas City. But after the Kansas City stuff, I don't feel that threat as much. And it's something where I think the show lost it a little bit. Another thing that I had an issue with was the very last episode. I think Joel's crusade through the Firefly headquarters. I don't want to spoil anything too much, but his crusade through the Firefly headquarters in the final episode of season 1, I don't think it captures the same brutality that I experienced when I was playing the game. Something that I don't think the adaptation did quite as well, and I don't think it captured as well, and it wasn't very one-to-one. I think the game did that a lot better, and I think that's where the show had some room to improve. So while it was a great adaptation of the video game, there are a few things I think it loses in the adaptation when it transitions to the show. So that's about all I got in the bad. So let's just move on to my final thoughts of The Last of Us Season 1. The Last of Us Season 1 was a tremendous experience. I love this show. Bella Ramsey, they did an amazing job with their performance as Ellie. I was so invested with their performance. Pedro Pascal, I thought he did great as Joel. Elevated the character that I love from the games and brought some new elements to the character. Both of these actors brought something unique to these roles. They still captured the essence and the core of who these characters were from the games, but they also make me see these characters in a different light in the show for good, for the most part, I think. I think they did an amazing job there. I think the writing was on point. The creative team, the creative force behind this whole show had a true passion for transitioning and adapting the material from the games to the show. And I think they all did a great job. This is one of the best adaptations, probably the best adaptation I have seen, from game to screen or book to screen or whatever. One of the greatest adaptations I have ever seen. There was true love behind this project, and I'm so excited to go through The Last of Us Season 2. There's true love for that project. There's still so much to get out of this world, and I am so excited to dive deeper into The Last of Us world. I love The Last of Us Season 1. So excited for Season 2. If I'm going to give the show a rating, it has got to be a 4.5 out of 5 or an A- on the letter scale. Not perfect. It has a few things that draw it back, like I said, in the mixed and negative aspects of this show, but it is overall a wonderful experience, a gripping experience, and it really pulls you into this world. You feel the depth of these characters. You feel the emotion of these characters, the drama behind everything. It is so deep, so fantastic, and is so intriguing. I love this show. I thoroughly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, check out The Last of Us Season 1 right now. Go down in the comment section, let me know what you thought of the show. I'd love to hear from you. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live on this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you all have an awesome and a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.